my far left. You are far left, aren't you?
In my proper place.
Michael Eisenscher, National Coordinator of U.S. Labor Against the War, organizer, negotiator, labor education writer. Our other speaker is Jack Rasmus.
The centrist of the group.
The centrist, yes. A journalist, a playwright. His recent books are Obama's Economy, Recovering for the Few, Epic Recession, Prelude to Global Depression.
Fiscal stimulus did not get a recovery for everybody. You got it for Wall Street, you got it for the wealthy, you got it for the corporations. The rest of us aren't there yet. The policies were wrong. What's going on right now in Washington and the sequestered cuts, 1.2 trillion over 10 years that they decided last August 11th, 2011 to put off to January 1st. Fiscal cliff, kick it down the road 2 more months. Now it's March 1st. Social Security and Medicare are the main targets of all of this deficit cutting that's been going on. It's not over. There's going to be another deadline date on March 27th when the government runs out of money. There's going to be another debt ceiling date, May 18th. And then there's going to be, even later in the year, another punch-up when we start talking about big tax cuts for corporations and changing the entire tax code. They're all in agreement of $4 trillion got to be cut. Whether it's going to be taxes or spending, and if it's spending, is it defense and non-defense, and if it's taxes, is it on the 2% or the rest of us? The deficits and the debt, we've run up about $10 trillion since 2000. If you're going to cut the deficit, you ought to identify the areas that were responsible for the run-up and focus on those. The real causes of why we ran up $10 trillion. First of all, is war, inflationary war spending. It's responsible to $2 trillion of that $10 trillion. The Bush tax cuts, $3.4 trillion over a decade, 80% of which go to the wealthiest, 20% in corporations. And most of that, 80% goes to the top 1% and 5%. Bailouts and stimulus, about $2 trillion. Multinational corporations shuffling their profits offshore and refusing to bring them back and repatriate them and pay. Another $800 billion. Lost tax revenue because we have this deep, deep recession that we're still not over yet in terms of the job market. We still have over 20 million people unemployed. We've had 27 million for 5 years now. They're not paying taxes. And businesses that would have hired them and produced things, they're not paying as much taxes either. The fact that you don't have job recovery is a big reason you have a loss of tax revenue. You put the Bush tax cuts and the lost tax revenue, and then you put the $1.5 trillion in tax cuts that were part of this stimulus, and 60% of the whole $10 trillion run-up is, guess what? Revenue problems. It's a lack of tax revenue. It's not too much spending. Then we have medical cost inflation. You know, the government pays for Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. We don't pass any tax to fund prescription drugs. Over $500 billion since 2005. No tax. Well, it's all going to come out of deficits, which means it's all part contributing to debt. Part B, Part A, Medicare, hospitalization and doctors. Big run-up in costs across the government. And finally, interest on the debt. There's $10 trillion. Is Social Security broke? No way. Social Security, since 1986, has generated, along with federal pensions, $2.7 trillion surplus. How could it be in trouble? Well, they say we got all these baby boomers, you know, and in the future, down the road, 10 years from now, whatever, we're going to be in trouble. Not so. We have $2.7 trillion in the Social Security Trust Fund, built up over the years. Is the country broke? Right? You hear, oh, we're broke, we're living way beyond our needs. Well, that's not true either. Corporations are sitting on $2 trillion of cash, refusing to invest and create jobs in the U.S. The big banks are sitting on $1.4 trillion in cash. The multinational companies have shuffled off $1.7 trillion in their offshore subsidiaries, which are really accounts in New York, and refusing to bring it back and pay their taxes. We're not broke. All the money is accumulated at the top, and those at the top won't let go. That's why the tax cuts are the most important thing to them. It's not deficits that are the most important thing to Republicans and business. It's the tax cuts, stupid. Paul Ryan and those people want to institute vouchers, reduce the cost of living adjustment in Medicare, raise the age in Medicare, no adjustment for inflation in the vouchers. You've got Medicare, you're going to pay $550 deductible. That's sense and bolts. To raise the age of eligibility, it's 67, 68. Like right now, you only get 80% coverage on Part B doctors. You gotta go get supplemental? You want the other 20%? Well, they want to do the same thing for Part A. And on Social Security, they're all in agreement to cut the COLA and to raise the age of eligibility. Make eligibility on Social Security disability insurance much tighter. Too many people, they think, are taking SSDI, even though there's not a problem there. Raise the eligibility age for both Social Security and Medicare to 70. That's what the big businesses want to do, the CPOs. Reduce or end the COLA. Introduce a means test. And we like the idea of vouchers. What are some of the solutions? Medicare's not really in a problem. Okay, long term, no. Social Security, definitely not. We got all this surplus. We could solve this $4 trillion deficit thing with one stroke. If we repealed the Bush tax cuts, $4 trillion, it's gone. We are all broke. The money's all bottled up in the rich man's pockets, and they won't let it out. And Social Security is not in a crisis, and even Medicare is not in a crisis, except Part D. The solutions to this are really very, very simple and not very costly. We're talking about the wrong things. And as long as they keep us distracted talking about the things they want us to talk about, oh, we got to cut, oh, you know, we're in deep trouble, we're going to spin our wheels. Somehow we got to get to the real debate and the real issues.
Jack said, we're not broke. And that's true. The country is not broke. But the system is broken. Democracy is broken. There's no crisis, but there is a crisis. It's a manufactured crisis. It was a crisis created specifically to justify imposing an austerity plan on the American people. We've got to make it clear to people that you cannot get to Prosperity Street by taking the austerity road. It doesn't go there. It will not take us to economic revival. It will not take us to full employment. It will not overcome poverty. It will not reduce inequality. When you ask the American people, these are the things they care about. Americans have been lulled into a kind of complacency and inactivity that we've got to figure out how to overcome. This is about basic values. When you talk to people and get down to the values that people care about, you can move them to do things they would not do. Progressives, from slightly left of center to the far left, our views today are the majority views of the American people. We are squarely in the mainstream of political thinking of the American people. It's those politicians in Washington who are the extremists. They're the fringe element. And we've got to talk to people about that. They are working for different paymasters. That's the system that's broken. And that's going to require a constitutional amendment that makes it clear once and for all that corporations are not people. And they do not have the same rights as people. They don't have the right of free speech. The charge I've got tonight is to talk to you about the military side of the budget. Let's get down to the language we use. Drop the term defense spending. There's nothing defensive about it. The Pentagon is not about national defense. Even the term military spending doesn't quite reflect what we want to get at. When you test these phrases with people, the one that they respond to most viscerally is Pentagon spending. They understand that the Pentagon is an unaccountable runaway bureaucracy that is not working for them. We spend 57% of our discretionary budget on the military. 57 cents out of every dollar that you give the government goes to the Pentagon, to the arms makers. National security is not about how big your military is, what missiles you have, which of the latest fighter planes you have. National security is when people have a home, an income, decent retirement, the right to education. Those are the things that give people a sense of security. If we put a fraction of the money we now squander on weapons we don't need for enemies that no longer exist, for wars we cannot fight, into aggressive diplomacy, we would raise our national security immeasurably.